Hi everybody, this is Casper36, and I am happy to be recording a playthrough of my favorite video game of all time, Final Fantasy VI. But I stumbled upon the other day a ROM hack that is recent, or at least recently translated to English. It's called Final Fantasy VI T Edition. And what got my attention about it was that it was described this way. Think of Final Fantasy VI as a fun, lengthy, and more difficult version of the original from an alternate universe. So that caught my attention right away. This is my favorite game of all time. I was 11 when it came out. And I'm excited, honestly, to see what this is all about. So we saw the little mark at the bottom there, letting us know this is the T edition. Letting us know it's a special edition, so I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And we're going to see what this is all about. So let's begin. So I'm familiar pretty thoroughly with the original game. I've played through it 16, 17 times over the course of my life. So this was a Japanese translation with an English patch. So some of the wording will be a little bit different. But I am curious to see how much it's changed. So right now it's just giving a background to this, to the world of this game. About 1,000 years ago, there was this war called the War of the Magi, or Magi, where there were these magical beasts warring with humans who wanted their powers. It mentioned that the world was almost on the brink of cataclysm. Magic seemed to exist when these magical creatures disappeared. That the rest is basically lost to history, and it mentioned that humans were once again seeking this mystical power, and could it be on the verge of another cataclysm? So that's the backdrop to the game, the introduction. It starts us off here on this snowy hill, where it will mention that one of these magical beasts was recently discovered during the excavation of a new mine. So enters these three characters, two soldiers, and a girl to be named later. That's interesting. Normally it just starts off with some dialogue. Oh, nice, but it's giving us some notes here. Kupo, back to the game. So for those of you who are not familiar with Final Fantasy VI, I will describe the differences of this and the original game and give the background and lore. But also, I'll give some of my personal feelings toward the game. Growing up, playing this, how it impacted me. But to start off with, we have Biggs and Wedge, sometimes Vix and Wedge. And they are here to discuss why they're here, of course. They are part of this empire, known as the Gestalian Empire, it's called in some translations. And they were sent to investigate this creature that had been excavated. They referred to this third character as a witch because she naturally has magical ability, something that no one else has ever had. It's described that she's fried 50 soldiers in under 3 minutes just to give some impact to what she's capable of, really describing her strength. But that she was wearing this slave crown that they put on her head, that she's completely under their command. So with just a few lines of dialogue, it really sets up the back history, but also where we're entering into this. A lot of ambiguity, of course. So the credits are going to roll over this little clip here, and today this doesn't look terribly amazing, but this game came out in 1995. This was amazing graphics. It's really hard to put into words if you weren't there, but the Super Nintendo, it was near the end of the Super Nintendo. This kind of pseudo 3D effect had been in a couple of games like Secret of Mana, but really, this is showing what the Super Nintendo was capable of near the end of its life. But a little bit about my love of this game. If you weren't around in the mid-90s, there weren't a whole lot of role-playing games in the United States, especially if you live in a smaller area like me. 6 or 7 role-playing games were all that you've ever played on the Super Nintendo, so each one really had this impact on me. These were the days when graphics were pixelated, so you used your imagination to imagine what that would have looked like. And that's just something that's lost today with great graphics. The ability to kind of merge your imagination with what you're seeing on the screen really made these games unique and different to each person who played it. The experience of playing these old video games when they were all that you had really made them a special place in the heart. Now we've got thousands of games. Everybody can pick very niche, specialized games. But just pick up a role-playing game like this when, you know, Street Fighter and Mario were like the most ambitious games of the time. It's really saying something. And I'll probably call back, you know, times from my first playthrough when I was 11 years old as we played through this. But this was probably the first Final Fantasy I ever beat. 40 or 50 hours that first time playthrough. But anyways, the game proper begins here. They approach the city of Narshe, and they mentioned that they're going to be heading through looking for this Esper. So we first get to move here. So let's take a look at our inventory screen here, or status screen rather. But right away, I'm noticing that a lot of differences here. So it mentions that they have like job titles. Magitech Soldier, Imperial Soldier, that's different than the original. Let's look at their skills. This looks pretty normal. The equipment screen looks a lot different. So normally in the original game it would say like mithril knife or mithril sword, leather helmet, leather armor, but now it has a little icon next to it, next to what kind it is. So that gives it a bit of a different flavor. That's kind of cool. Relics, we'll see a little bit more, maybe about an hour into the game. And then looks like the girl is at level 3 to start off with. I think she normally starts at level 4. So that's kind of interesting. It did mention that this game would be harder. Maybe that's part of it. So let's take a look at the first battle hill. Silver Lobo. That's a different name for this. And then, oh, this is Wedge. So normally the soldiers would have like a fire, an ice, and a thunder beam. But this is interesting that even the normal soldiers have some extra things. We'll notice that she has the same things. Okay, so that makes a bit of sense. So in the original game, the girl had all these extra little moves, and the soldiers only had like 3 moves, and it was fire, ice, and lightning. The fact that they all have the same makes a lot more sense, to be honest. So essentially we're just going to start marching through town. There's about 4 or 5 battles. I do like the damage little thing is in a different font. It's a lot smaller. Normally the little damage counter is about the same size as the numbers there at the bottom of the screen. I kind of like that. That's pretty cool. It says we obtained a potion. That's interesting because I think normally they drop tonics, which heal by like 50. I'll hold on to that because I have less hit points than I think I usually do. I'm also going to go down into the config, move battle speed, take speed up. But I always like to set the gauge to off. And what that is if you saw in the battle, the little gauge goes up to let you know when the next person is going to attack. When you set it to off, it'll let you know your current and max HP. And I think it's a little bit more important because, I mean, I can't control when I'm going to attack. I'm going to attack when it tells me, but knowing my max HP is a little bit more important. So we'll set that. And I also like to change the background. I usually like that one. Let's see if there's any that are different. They'll kind of look not like I normally expect. So we're just going to set 3. That's what I like to set it to. Ooh! So holding the B button lets you run, which that's a new mechanic. And that's going to be helpful later with some relics. One relic in particular we'll talk about later. Narshe God for Narshe Guard. Can't talk. Alright, so there's all kinds of great little moves here, but I always like to pick the Bio Blaster because it hits everybody in one hit. I'm also taking all these battles because, well, first, as I read, it's supposed to be a little bit harder. But one interesting mechanic about Final Fantasy VI, at least here early in the game, at the beginning, is that when you get new characters, the next character will always be like one level higher than your current character. So one thing that I tend to always do when I play through this game is spend a little time leveling up early on in the game, so that by the time I get the next character, they're also leveled up a little bit. So this is always a pincer attack, as they call it, or they're attacking from either side. Ooh, this is a little harder because my girl is down to 15 hit points already. 9. Ooh. Build her up. Magitek beam, that's interesting, because normally it would say there's fire, ice, and lightning, and actually the lightning or thunder beam looks like that, so that must be what, instead of lightning, they call it a Magitek beam. Alright, cool. Everybody gained a level. Got another potion. They're being a little generous with these potions, I guess, in anticipation of this being a harder game. Already, it does feel like it's a little harder, especially with those low hit points. So this should be the last guard battle before we get to the mines. Ooh, so that move is normally called critical. So they've changed the names of some of these moves as well. So just overall, the whole interface looks different. And that's a cool thing. It's going to make it a different experience for sure, but it looks, I don't know, sleeker. Alright, so we reached the mines. Get a little bit of intel mentioning that it's within this mine shaft in particular that Esper is supposed to be in. Ooh, the music sounded different. Only heard it for a second, but when we get out of this battle, pause for a second. That may be another of the changes for this game. New music. I think I did read that. I tried not to read any of the notes of how this is different. I wanted this to be a completely new experience for me all the way around. But I think I did read something about the music being different, and there was that thing at the very beginning that talked about music. So that's cool if they have like these brand new music tracks. Yeah, that sounds really cool. I don't recognize it either. I may be wrong. So this little sparkle here is a save point. It lets you use like tints and things like that. We're actually going to save it. I'm going to save over that test data that I had there. Alright. So the mine area is really short. There's actually going to be a boss just down here up on screen. So instead of pincer attack, it said surrounded. So even the language is a little bit different. But then again, as I mentioned, that may not necessarily be because of this being a special edition, in as much as this was just the Japanese version with an English patch translation over it. So far, I'm really liking this. It still feels natural. It still feels like the Final Fantasy VI game, but with just like a new coat of paint on the front of it. The interface feels a little neater. I really do like that font size on the damage counters. so what's going to happen here is that they've boarded up this particular cave where the Esper is, and so the soldiers are going to break it down. Then there will be a surprise on the other side of a monster that will be our first boss of the game. A mirror. That's interesting. Normally this boss is Whelk, which is like a shelled slug. So our first boss of the game is a puzzle boss, but it being the first boss of the game and 10 minutes in, it's not that difficult of a puzzle. And they're even going to tell us what to do here. Don't hit the shell, only hit it. So essentially this boss is a lot like the first boss of Final Fantasy IV, the Mist Dragon, which turns to mist and you have to pause during that particular phase. Though with all three of these soldiers having the tech missile, this battle might go a little quicker, because normally only the girl had Magitek missile. It countered by healing itself with a thunder move. That's interesting. So is that going to do that every time? Yep. Okay, so that is different. That is new. So if we hit it with a missile, it's going to heal itself just a little bit. It's interesting. It normally does not do that. Hit all of us. Whoa, that did a lot of damage. So that must be one way that this is harder. So it does do a move called Gigavolt, and it usually hits everybody, but not nearly for that much. So bosses are going to be stronger, even the very first boss. That's pretty cool. While it's in the shell, this is an opportunity for everybody to go up. I feel like I'm doing a lot of damage to this guy. So he also has more hit points for sure. Those little heals aren't helping each other. And there we go. One cycle usually was enough for the original. And that's our first boss. We got a high potion. So the terminology used to be tonic potion. Tonic healed 50, potion healed 2 or 250. Now it's potion, high potion. Cool. Alright. So at this point we just walk up and we trigger some plot events here in the next room. So the soldiers plus the girl will find the frozen Esper, which will start glowing, and ultimately it will start reacting to the girl, which we're about to see here. So there's been conversations online about what's actually going on here. We see Biggs and Wedge kind of disappearing. Some have said that they are being killed by the Esper. Others have said that they are just being teleported, or some sort of transcendentalism. But as far as I know, for all intents and purposes, they are just straight up destroyed. They were done away with by that Esper. The girl, on the other hand, starts to form some sort of like connection with it, but then the suit explodes because of the light. That's what we see there. After the explosion, it blacks out, and we come to the girl who is now in a house. Ooh, and she has a costume change, so the girl looks definitely different than she did originally. And that's pretty cool. I really like that costume. She even has a cape. That's pretty cool. So to advance the plot, we need to talk to the old man there, but if you ever see these little clocks, there's a 90% chance it's got an elixir in them. Almost all of them have, so anytime I see one, I always check it. Just grab that real quick, and then we'll come back over and talk to the old man. So here we learn a little bit about the slave crown that they had on her head, how she was being controlled. She mentions that she can't remember anything, most likely because of how long it was on her head. We'll see here in just a few seconds that she's had this slave crown on her head for quite a while. A mysterious young woman born with the gift of magic and enslaved by the Gestalian Empire. So now we get to name her. Her standard name is Tara. Tara Branford, in fact. And I will keep that. I will keep everyone's name, but I always prefer to do the proper English first letter capital, everything else lowercase. So her name is Tara. That line is not in the original. You must be made of tougher stuff. So essentially, there's this empire, and they are kind of taking over towns. Narshe, or Narshe, is neutral. They are not on the Gestalian side. They're not on the side of anyone who's fighting the Gestalian side. However, in attempts to stay neutral, they want that Magitech armor so they can use it themselves. And also because, you know, she's a soldier of the Empire. They'd like to ask her a few questions, obviously. However, the old man, we'll find out his name later, is Arvis. Arvis is less than neutral in the town and is willing to help. And he tells us that we can sneak out the back, head into the mines, and there's a path that goes through the mines and out of town. However, as we're trying to sneak out, we get caught by the guards. Of course, they can't reach us while we're up here, but now that they know we're heading into the mines, they'll be on our path, so to speak. So now we get to fly solo with Tara. And it's at this point that normally when I play through this game, I like to spend a little bit of time here doing some leveling up. I may have mentioned this earlier, but each character that you get will be at 1 level plus what your last character was. So I tend to like to level Tara up a little bit so that when we get the next character, they're already, you know, at the same level or level past. So if Tara's at 5, next character's at 6. If Tara's at 6, next character's at 7, so forth. So usually, you know, you play a role-playing game, you're investing some time. So I usually invest a little bit of time here at the very beginning to level up a bit. For the sake of time, since I'm recording this playthrough, I'm not going to do that. But I am going to get at least one more level, get up to 6 before we move forward. I'll throw save here. There's a couple treasure chests we're going to walk around and get, and in the process we'll also gain a level. Oh, that's interesting. Normally the chest in this game just says you got this, but actually added some dialogue there, which it kind of makes sense and it kind of doesn't, because like on the one hand, it's like in real life if you're walking around, you know, you opened up a box, the box doesn't just say found such and such. But on the other hand, you also don't announce out loud to yourself, if you were by yourself, oh look, a Phoenix down. Oh look, a tent. So, I get it, you have to suspend disbelief a little bit for a video game. But it's just an interesting artistic choice to make that dialogue rather than just the message that I found something in the chests. Let's see. Oh, a tent. I wonder if she acts with the same level of enthusiasm depending on whatever it is. So like, oh, a tent. Oh, a great weapon. Oh, a potion. Oh, a Genji glove. So just, maybe I'll just take a moment or two while we're fighting and leveling up to kind of describe some of the other... what makes this an interesting playthrough is I try to play through 6 every unique way that I can. So I'm not really a speedrunner, so I've never really attempted to beat it as fast as I can. But I have played it all in Japanese, where I could read any of the dialogue as a challenge to see if I can get through it. I've also done, there's a community that's made a randomizer. It's been kind of fun. Randomizing all the characters, all the skills. It gets very granular to what all can be randomized. And that made for an interesting playthrough as well. But I do like that music change. The music sounds really cool in of itself, but it makes me wonder what other things that are new that we can expect, right? So different music. So let's see, we are 134, 3 to 4 battles away from this level. So I'll just kind of run around here. Now, normally when I play through, depending on how much time I want to invest, sometimes I'll just get up to, like, say, level 9. There have been times where I would hang around here all the way up until level 15 or 16, which makes, if we were to be honest, like the first 30% of the game really easy if you make it that long. But that does take a little bit of coordinating and planning here, because our MP is a finite resource at this point, so I would be far more judicious with using spells. I wouldn't be casting fire and cure as much. In fact, when I do that, knowing that I won't be healing my MP, I only use cure outside of battle to get my HP back up, and I would be strictly like physically attacking. But since I'm only going to be gaining 1 level and moving on, I'm just speeding it up a little bit by just using fire spells on these enemies. We'll knock them out. We should be gaining a level this battle or the next. It'll be the next. Alright, one more battle. Ooh, that's not good. Gotta be careful here. I think it's probably more practical that I just go ahead and use a cure. So you can see at the bottom what I was talking about, the gauge. Now it's showing my current and max HP rather than the little scroll bar. And again, a lot of people prefer the scroll bar because they'll know the instant that somebody's turn is ready to come up, but the truth of the matter is, I mean, nothing's changing. I'm waiting for my turn, and when the little cursor comes, it's my turn. Terra gained a level. Terra learned Poisona. Okay, so originally that spell, because of character limitations, it's like an abbreviation of the word antidote, A-N-T-D-O-T or something like that. So another change I see is that there's not a character limitation on some of the spell names. Oh, nope, still 6 character. Here's poison and disease effects. Interesting. So we're going to save right here, and that's going to lead us to finishing moving through this cave, and we're going to trigger an event as soon as we go up those stairs up there. So in the process of getting out of these mines, the guards catch up with us and kind of corner us here into a corner of the mine. And it looks bad, but then Terra falls into a precipice. It's even worse. She falls to a kind of like a floor below, so to speak. It doesn't kill her, but She eventually passes out from the fall. And so we're going to have a quick little flashback here to give us some more background. And we're also introduced to Kefka. Now, Kefka is, be a spoiler here, he is going to be our antagonist, and he is 100% completely amoral. He is pure crazy, and the game doesn't go into 100%, but if you look, you know, there's been some like things you can read in the book and in other places that kind of describe why he's so crazy. It's really an interesting kind of a story background. They might maybe even add some of that into this patch. But essentially, Kefka is one of the generals of the Gestalian Empire, and he is kind of responsible for the army and the pursuit of strengthening up this army with magic. And so, because Terra's a natural magic user, she's put underneath his leadership's not really the right word here. Command, essentially. So this is Emperor Gestal, and we see his generals behind him. There's some very World War II vibes going on here, shall we say. And we will come to know all of these generals fairly in depth by the end of the game. We get a good bit of time for each one of them. One of them in particular far more than the others. But this gives us kind of a background as to what the impetus behind the Gestalian Empire. What is it that they want? They're clearly not good, and they're seeking world domination. With Terra passed out, then we cut to this scene that's taking place back in Arvis's house. We're introduced to our second playable character. A treasure hunter and trail-worn traveler searching the world over for relics of the past. We're introduced to Locke Cole. Locke is the wit character. He is a thief class. He's very casual in the way he talks. I love that line. I love using that line all the time. Semantic nonsense. So essentially Arvis has summoned Locke as a liaison to the Returners, which is a resistance group to the Empire. Huh. I met the girl. It's in the Super Nintendo version in English. He doesn't say it quite like that, but it's clear that Arvis and Locke are on the same page here. So the dialogue normally is, at this point, we need to get that girl to understand our position. Here he seems to be a little bit more focused on describing the Returners to us as the player. That's interesting, and it fits nicely. We're setting up who the Gestalian Empire is. So Arvis is kind of like an informant to the Returners here in Narshe. Locke is a liaison that kind of moves between resistance places as an information source. What Arvis is asking Locke to do is to go after the girl, since she went by herself and the guards were chasing her, and to help her get out. And he tells us that once we leave the city, we need to head to Figaro, which is to the south. So he cuts forward. Locke finds the girl. Just in time for the guards to get down here. So it is not just one guard, but a whole series of monsters that the guard is using to help. Now we're introduced to an interesting, unique mechanic to Final Fantasy VI. And no, I'm not referring to the Moogles who are coming in, although that they've been introduced in games before this and they're awesome. I love the Moogles. But Final Fantasy VI has this multi-party battle scenario that we'll see a few times. It's kind of like the active time events in 9, except that it involves battles. So I'm going to get 3 groups of individuals, which I can alternate between. So I'm going to with the run mechanic, I'm going to run down here with the second group who has Mog, who's kind of like a leader of the Moogles, if you will. He has more hit points, more strength. And he also has a skill called Dance, which I'll describe here in just a second. To start off with, he doesn't know any dances. The way that he learns dances is that he will fight a battle in a different biome. In this case, we're in a cave, so he will master a new dance. He'll master the cave dance. He'll get a different dance for every new location, so there will be one for you know, plains, grasslands. There will be one for cities, one for mountains, and so forth. What the dances do is there are 4 moves per dance. You select a dance and then he goes into kind of a trance where you can't control him anymore, and he will randomly pick one of those 4 moves every turn. Now I'm setting this up in such a way as to get rid of all the enemies with the rest of the Moogles, so that Mog's party will have retained as many hit points as possible, because I want Mog's party to actually fight this boss. The reason why is because when we do those dances here, one of the 4 moves for the cave dance that we have has a one-hit KO that actually works on this boss. So there will be a 25% chance right out the box that we might KO the boss. Which, given how this game is supposed to be harder, that might be good. It may not even work for all I know, but it's very beneficial. Makes that battle go by really fast. Even if it's not that 1 in 4, all the other ones do a lot of damage. I'm just going to kind of get through these battles with this group of Moogles. I'll switch over to Locke's group to get rid of 1 or 2. And then I'll send Mog down to finish the boss off. That Blizzard move is actually very strong even in the normal version of the game, so that's not terribly surprising. I do like how each of the Moogles has a unique name, a unique weapon. They are all unique characters, even though we see about 11 of them right here. I think that was really interesting, with a lot of time and attention given to that. So this will be our first, maybe, our first introduction to Locke as a playable character. He is Thief class, so he can steal. And he's really slow, it's going to take him a long time, so by the time he gets all the way up, I'll have fought the boss, so we'll just go ahead and run. Log down here to take this guy out. Let's take a second and just heal up my party, just in case. Here we go. This is normally Marshall, looks like Guard Leader is his name. So what will happen is that Mog will start a dance. He will use 1 of 4 moves, but then he goes into this trance where every turn he just randomly uses a move. So once we get him started, he's no longer usable. Whoa! Oh, that's the rarer of the 4 moves for sure. And that did a lot of damage. Wow! I don't think I've ever seen a dog go that fast. Even still, because usually even if he does snare, which is the 1-hit KO move, still got to take those wolves out, so that was by far the fastest I've ever done that. That was pretty cool. Alright, so battle is averted. We've defeated the guards. At this point, Locke can escape with the girl. I do like Locke's personality. Even though he is a thief, a rascal, he is, you know, a noble thief, honorable. So these mines lead to an exit, a secret exit that's been blocked over, but there's this secret button switch that opens up the passage. And Terra comes too. Terra is still suffering from some pretty severe amnesia. And Locke reacts pretty strongly to that. You've lost your memory. He seems very emotionally triggered by that statement. This is actually a pretty poignant scene. It's very, very little said, but some foreshadowing for much later as far as Locke's character story arc. Especially this line where, just at the mention of amnesia, I won't leave your side until your memory returns. Even Tara seems taken back by that. I'm not... Oh wow, so this line is not in the original game either. I'm not going to up and abandon someone just because they lost their memory. I'll keep you safe, I promise. So, a little stronger on the fact that there's some foreshadowing to that statement in this game. I do like that it's a little bit more subtle originally, but I do kind of appreciate that as well. So we're out of the city at this point. There's a couple things we could do. If we try to go back in, it's gonna tell us we can't for quite obvious reasons, right? There's also this little building right here, the Adventurers Guild, the school for the beginning adventure. So this place is just full of all the little like how-tos when it comes to exploring the world, traveling, status effects, battling, all that fun stuff. Which I am kind of interested to see if anything's different in here. Heals your HP and MP, recovery springs. Such springs are located throughout the world. Honestly, I can only remember 2 or 3 of them, so not really that much. But there's a save point right here. I'm going to go ahead and save, because I think this is a good time to stop. We got set up, we were introduced to our first 2 characters. Honestly and truthfully, I'm excited how this is going to turn out. Like the little things, or like quality of life improvements so far, but you know, what they could lead into has really got my attention peaked. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our first video here, but I appreciate joining on this adventure with me. This is going to be a treat for me, but hopefully it'll be a treat for you as well, to be able to see some of these changes if this is a game that you enjoy. So until our next video,